Hello, it's Hannah, and you are listening to No Longer Legally Detained, the podcast about life after the psych ward, answering the big question, how to navigate being an adult when you never expected to be one. Hello and welcome back. Thank you so much to everybody who has been listening, liking and sharing the podcast. I hope you're all well and you're having a lovely week. This week on Tuesday, it was Autistic Pride Day. And Autistic Pride Day is a celebration of Autistic Pride held on the 18th of June every year. It recognises the importance of pride in our autistic identity and its role in bringing about positive change in our broader society. The idea is about raising awareness and true acceptance of autism, to promote differences in presentation and to widen the understanding of neurodivergence. It also seeks to counter the negative stereotypes and stigma attached to being autistic. While I spend a lot of my time and energy defending the difficulties faced by those of us who are autistic, trying to counter the belief that people have that everybody's just a little bit autistic, or that we're the snowflake generation or attention seeking, we often feel we have to prove it's not a trend or just some kind of fun, quirky trait. And being autistic in a neurotypical world is really disabling and exhausting. However, it isn't all bad, as much as a lot of the time it can feel that way. I've realised, actually, unbeknownst to myself, that due to the narrative surrounding autism and probably my own internalised ableism, which I was unconscious of but is something that I'm working on, and also my need for perfection and validation, I have definitely been silencing my own autistic pride, my autistic identity and my acceptance of who I am. Even when you're in the world of autism acceptance and you think you've accepted your own identity, sometimes you realise that that's actually just the beginning. That it's a bit like an onion, and you have to keep peeling it. You think you've done, but then there are more layers. I know that even with all of the difficulties of being autistic and also having a pathological demand avoidance profile and ADHD too, it is all part of who I am. It's the lens in which I view the world, and in a really good way, it makes me who I am. Personalities are complicated, but my autism is part of how I have developed and who I've become. I want to embrace this further. I still want to fight the discrimination and highlight the mistreatment, but I also want to share the beauty in my autism, the strengths and the positives. As autistic adults, we're in a really powerful position to share the positives and allow the next generation to know that they are not wrong, incapable or broken. Yes, we will all struggle, and we will probably struggle forever, but that autism isn't something to be ashamed of or to hide, but it's just part of who we are. And that we have so many strengths and positives and bring so much to society and to our families and to our loved ones and to ourselves, and that those should also be equally celebrated. Very recently, it has come back to my attention, my own wobbles when it comes to my autistic identity. The internalised unconscious ableism, which has been so well driven into me by society, as well as the narratives which surround autism. It's no wonder that I have questions and fears about my own identity, future, and what being autistic means. However, this is not something to be ashamed of. I believe it's a natural consequence of growing up in a society that values success and values people in a very linear way. But I want to challenge this narrative, not just for myself, but for other people, for future autistic people who are growing up and the autistic community as a whole. I've definitely been realising how the negative connotations in relation to lots of aspects of being autistic and the constant discrimination, battle, having to fight and advocate for myself, constantly being told either I'm too disabled or I'm not disabled enough, that I am too autistic or I'm not autistic, that I'm making it up, that I'm wanting labels, that it's made me as a person really confused. It's left me in a position where I'm not sure who I am. All I have is these very negative connotations and words kind of thrown at me, and with that it leads to a lot of questions. It leads to a lot of who am I, what am I a really bad negative thing? Because when you're constantly told that you're broken or that you're attention seeking or that you've got too many labels and you've got not enough labels, or that you're too disabled or you're not disabled enough or you're not autistic enough or you're too autistic, that you don't fit into the normal, but then you don't fit into the weird either, that you're just wrong in every capacity. It just makes you become this thing that has no idea who you really are. And I think when it comes to autistic pride and having that pride in our autistic identity, that is what allows us the future where we can thrive, and that sense of purpose and sense of self. And to get to that autistic pride, to be able to accept our autistic identity, we have to battle through the negative connotations, the stereotypes, the opinions that other people have around what is autism, being autistic. And it's really hard. So that is why I wanted to talk more about this as something that I'm still navigating, but something that I so passionately believe needs to change. The narrative around autism has got to change, because too many autistic people are suffering due to the negative narratives that surround. One of my favourite blogs I've ever written is called "I Don't Want to Be Included, I Want True Inclusion." At the beginning of this year, 2023, I had my autistic characteristics used against me yet again. My potential to add value to a situation rejected because my inclusion left others feeling puzzled and uncomfortable. Because having been included, I wasn't conforming in the way they expected or understood. This was not inclusion. It continues to baffle me how, in this day and age, people still discriminate against things just because they don't understand. I believe discrimination comes from fear, and that fear comes from a place of ignorance and lack of education. Autistic people are too often in the news, heralded as murderers, psychopaths, monsters, who have little empathy, and autism is too often used as the reason they have caused such harm and destruction, whereas in truth there is much more to be uncovered. This damaging narrative plays into the idea that as autistic people we are less than our neurotypical counterparts, that our behaviours mean we belong locked up in institutions with no stimulation or hope for a future. Intelligence is categorised by a person's ability to fit into the mould that society deems acceptable. We are pushed through the sausage factory that is our education system, producing perfectly uniform sausages, and any deviation from this is unwanted and discarded. Being autistic, our brains don't function in this way. Our intelligence cannot necessarily be labelled by an A-level grade on a piece of paper. Our ideas may not flow from our lips in eloquent speech, or our independence dictated by our chronological age. Autism is a spectrum which is so wide and tall that it cannot be described within words on a page. With this comes the difficulty of explaining such a complex condition to the majority, a condition which we as autistics don't fully understand, and which comes with an infinite amount of support needs and strategies. We have come a long way from the days of Rain Man and Just Boys, and even further from being locked away in institutions with the key thrown away. However, we still have not come far enough. The word diversity and inclusivity are bandied around constantly, a buzzword used. The heralded value in most schools and within our healthcare system. Yet so many autistic children are still being excluded from school. Autistic teenagers incarcerated in mental health units, and only 22% of autistic adults are in any kind of employment. The leading cause of early death in autistic people is suicide. Already this year, we have seen reports on yet more autistic people who have died while under the care of the mental health system, and others who have been institutionalised in horrific conditions. According to Autistic and a study from 2012, 8 in 10 autistic people have a mental health condition. I myself am one of those. Growing up autistic is a lonely, confusing and traumatic experience. Like all people, autistic people want a purpose. We want to feel valuable and we want to contribute to our society. But we face an inordinate number of challenges to just function within every day. And then, when you add people who are unwilling to step out of their comfort zone and embrace the idea of true diversity and inclusivity, it is even harder. We don't want to be an add-on. We don't want to be invited but then made to feel like a nuisance when we can't get involved in exactly the same way. Far too often, places call themselves inclusive. They are happy and welcoming of those who are different. However, what they really mean is that once you are there, you are only truly welcomed if you can conform in the same way as everyone else. Nothing highlights this like our education system, a place where all children are entitled to a place within a mainstream school regardless of their needs. Parents are actively encouraged to send their autistic children to mainstream schools which claim values of inclusivity and diversity. Places that purport to help every child to strive for their best on their own individual education journey. But we have a national curriculum, expected milestones and teachers have targets to hit. There are 30 children to one adult, schools are chronically underfunded and schools are conformist. They have to be in this current state of our system. Everyone is welcome, but you will all have to behave and learn in exactly the same way. This continues when it comes to college and further education. This system is failing so many autistics. There is so much intellect, talent, ideas and inspiration locked within the barriers of communication. I don't want to be included in the game, but with the expectation to conform, meaning there is no way I can join in. Or even if I can, the mental impact will be so detrimental, I'll be left suicidal and broken. As an autistic person, I'm not asking to be the same as everyone else. I'm asking to be allowed to navigate life in my own way, a different and somewhat maybe strange way, but a way in which I can reach my own potential and find my own happiness. I want to contribute to society, to feel valued and not be seen as a drain. Our characteristics are often labelled as something which needs changing or therapy to remove. However, how about if we flip that on its head? We look at it not from the eyes of the neurotypical, but from the eyes of those whose brains are different. We may not speak, we may seem rude, we may not enjoy social gatherings, we may not find certain things relevant, we may flap our hands and we may laugh inappropriately, or we may also appear totally normal, but disappear for days to reset ourselves. As I say, autistic is not a one-size-fits-all. However, not one of these makes us less human. We may be more than happy coming to the event and just doing our own things at the side. School may not work for us in the same way as it does for others, and actually, that doesn't matter. Happiness, health and safety come first. In the same breath, though, we deserve the same opportunity as our neurotypical counterparts. The chance to learn, to work, to have fun. But this may not look the same as our neurotypical counterpart, and that is okay. It might even look weird to you. It may even make you feel uncomfortable. But when you have these feelings, search not to judge but to understand. To accept that you may never understand why that works for us, but that actually inclusivity isn't about being the same, but being allowed to be different. I go back to where I started this, with my experience of discrimination because I didn't conform. I didn't want to be included, and then forced to conform and judged and ridiculed when unable to do this. I wanted to be welcomed for who I was, as different as I am, but still valued in the same way as everyone else. We still have so far to come, but we must raise the voices of autistics and for those who are different. We deserve a life in which we're able to thrive in our own ways, not traumatised to conform for the comfort of others. I wrote that blog nearly a year and a half ago, and since then have still experienced many similar experiences, more times than I could care to remember or count. Not just experiences of discrimination in terms of being too disabled or too different to be included, but also experiences of people telling me that there's nothing wrong, that I just need to get on with it, that I'm making it up, that can't really be autistic, or well, you must have it really mildly because I can't tell. I'm sure some of those comments are well-meaning and they're not trying to be offensive or upsetting, but sadly they are. These comments add layers to my mask that I wear every single day. The more I'm told I don't fit in, or I should fit in, or there's nothing wrong with me, or there is something wrong with me, further within myself I go. The mask has to get thicker, and my own identity becomes further and further away from something that I can grasp onto. Through all of this, I think I began to lose myself. And then I think I'd find myself, but what I would find is a version of me that I still thought was societally expected and okay, that would be validated by other people and that other people wouldn't think was too wrong or too broken or too weird. I'd never allowed myself to really search within me, to find out who I am in a way that has no caveats of what other people want. And when I say that, it's not about being self-centred or being something that's so far-fetched from what is acceptable in society that it becomes, unnatural or weird and not, okay in terms of, what is legally allowed. But as an autistic person, I do not function or conform in a neurotypical way, in a way that society deems is acceptable. Yet when people look at me, they expect me to be able to be mainstream. They expect me to be able to conform, and they expect me to be able to do things just the same as everybody else. And I am a capable person. And that's where it becomes really hard, because I have neurotypical capabilities. As an autistic person, I'm not an alien. I'm not something that is, completely the opposite to everybody else. As autistic people, we are still people. We still have human traits. We have human characteristics. We are still people. And with that, we have capabilities that are the same as those who are neurotypical. In the same way that those who are neurotypical will have traits that are autistic, yet that doesn't mean that they are also autistic. The definition of being autistic is that it impacts your life in a way that is more than normal, that your life becomes more difficult to manage. And I think it's really hard when not only are we having, as autistic people, to fight that we are allowed to do things, that we are capable, and that we can. There's also the narrative that when we say we can, but we need some help, that people are like, well, hang on a minute, you said you could do it. And yes, I can do it, but I might not be able to do it in that exact way. And that's what I've definitely been noticing at the moment. And I think is why I've had a wobble, is because I've been trying to mould myself into this perfect autistic. This autistic that is autistic enough to be in the autistic community, but isn't too autistic that other people in society won't accept me. And it's a really sad narrative that as a society, we're not willing to accept autistic people. And that is a generalised statement. And of course, there are so many people who are accepting. But when we talk about acceptance, it's not just letting autistic people into the space. It's not just giving us some ear defenders or allowing us a brain break. True acceptance and inclusion is about valuing us as equals to everybody else in the space. It's being allowed to be part of the space, be allowed to work that space in our own way, of course not interfering or hurting anybody else. But on the whole, that's not what the majority of autistic people do. And absolutely, there will be autistic people who are not good people. That's the same as there are neurotypical people who are not good people. There'll be neurotypical people in spaces who will do things that interfere and get in the way and that hurt other people. Being autistic isn't inherently that. That's a human trait that we all sadly have. People don't understand that the two can live in parallel. That I can be an intelligent, capable person who could live alone, who can do my own taxes, while equally struggling with the labels in my clothes, struggling with sensory overload, struggling with burnout, not being able to talk sometimes, or not being able to communicate, getting so overwhelmed that I literally feel like I'm going to combust. That you can live with both of those things and both of them be equally valid. You don't have to be 100% in meltdown all of the time to be valid as an autistic person. You can have both. I look at it in terms of my ability to do a degree. I could do a degree. I am academically capable of doing a degree, and I have all of the aspects that I would need to complete a degree. And my standard of work would still be at degree level. And I would achieve all of the objectives that are required to get a degree. But I won't necessarily be able to do that in exactly the same way as everybody else. But that doesn't take away from their achievements or my own achievements. We're still achieving the same thing. We're still ticking the same objectives. We're still being compared against the same criteria, but we're being allowed to get to that criteria and to demonstrate how we meet that criteria in different ways. And that is something that I've noticed more and more recently people really struggle with. People that I've spoken to have gone, well, you can't have it both ways. You can't struggle, but also be capable. And while we have narratives like that, those of us who are autistic are going to struggle. And we're not going to be given the opportunities or the space to thrive because we're having to choose. We're having to choose and a choice that we can't make. Because ultimately, as much as I try to suppress, as much as I try to mask my autistic traits, they are there. And actually, why? Why am I trying to mask and suppress them? Because society have told me that I should be ashamed of them. Society have told me that if I show who I am, that I will not be allowed in places, that people will be mean to me, that people will tell me that I'm worthless, and that I'm broken, and that I'm stupid, that if I am who I am, that is not good enough, and that I am a problem, and that I'm a bad person. And when you have that belief that as your true authentic self, you are wrong, how can you have pride in that? How can you have pride in something that you're told is wrong? Because we are not wrong. It is not wrong to need support. It's not wrong to view the world in a different way. It's not wrong to be autistic. I am not ashamed of who I am, and I shouldn't be made to feel ashamed by anybody else. It's hard to stick out and stand up, but I want to stick out and stand up and say that I am autistic and I am proud of that. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, there are difficulties. And yes, I can be in absolute pain, but that is not any more so than anybody else. That as an autistic person, I bring so much to the world. That I am a person who is valuable and a person that is worthy and equal to everybody else on this planet. For so long, I still believed that I deserved second best, which is why I've changed some of the things that I'm doing. I'm no longer on the same exact path I was back in March this year, because I am learning to understand my worth. That other people might not understand my worth, and other people might think that I'm any number of things. But I know my worth. And I know that I'm autistic, and I know that that is okay. That autistic isn't this one-size-fits-all. There is no one face to autism. There is no one look or presentation or stereotype of what being an autistic person is. It isn't just the boy rocking in the corner. It's not just the non-verbal child. It's not the adult who can never live alone. There are aspects of all of those things because autism is a spectrum. And again, with that doesn't mean that any one part of being autistic is worse or better than any other. We have to remember that being autistic is one part. And being autistic isn't a learning disability. Some people have learning disabilities as well as being autistic, and that's part of their identity. And again, they will present differently. I have a pathological demand avoidance profile of autism. So again, my way I present of being autistic is going to be different. I'm also got ADHD, but I've also got mental health problems on top. But I'm also been brought up in the UK, and I've been brought up by my mum. So those things all impact who I am. But none of them make me better or worse. They just are. While we're constantly trying to show that one part of being autistic is worse than the other, or more people are valid in one way than the other, ultimately we're all suffering. We're all suffering because the narrative remains the same. And while that narrative remains the same, we're at a disadvantage. And actually, we must come together. Together, we can show that whatever your neurotype, autistic or not, neurotypical or not, actually every single neurotype is valid. And it's the diversity of brains that bring us the planet we have today, in the good and the bad. And for those of us who are autistic, actually learning about the positives, finding that identity, allows us the potential for a future. I am proud to be autistic. I am proud that my brain works in the way it does. Yes, there are things that really drive me nuts about it, but ultimately I am proud of who I am. And I want to share that. I want to share that here. I want to share that to the world because for too long I wasn't proud of who I was ashamed, and I hated myself. So today, 2 days after Autistic Pride Day, I'm focusing on the positives. And when I say that doesn't take away from the negatives or the struggles, you can have both. Both can stay hand in hand together. But I want to share some of the positives of being autistic, of having a brain which is wired in a different way. A brain which is hyper aware and hypersensitive. And again, just to clarify that this is my experience of being autistic. And that is something else that I'm so passionate about sharing, is that everyone experiences autism in a different way. And just because you're listening to me and thinking that that doesn't relate to the person you know who's autistic or doesn't relate to your autism, doesn't make either of us invalid. We can both sit side by side in being autistic and it presenting in very different ways. So I'm Hannah and I'm autistic. I love creativity. And for me, my hyper focus and hyper interest has allowed me the ability to investigate so many different creative avenues. It has allowed me the ability to play musical instruments and be able to pick up random musical instruments and play them and learn. I think one of the biggest positives of being autistic for me is my high moral compass, my need to fight for justice, my need for fairness and equality, my want and ability to stand up and speak out. I can't sit and be quiet. I can't let things happen and go by. And that is a strength. Just in the same way as my creativity and my music are strengths. I'm very empathetic and I have really good pattern recognition skills. I used to think that I was a soothsayer, almost like I had a crystal ball kind of vibe. Maybe like a bit like I was magic. But then sadly I realised that actually it wasn't those things. It's just part of being autistic, that my pattern recognition skills are really, really good. I know before something happens what is going to happen because of how things have happened in the past. I'm very good at reading people, and that can be a positive and a negative, but I can read people incredibly, incredibly well, sometimes better than they can read themselves. And that leads me to issues, but also is a strength and a positive. And it's really hard as I'm sitting here trying to list off positives about myself because it's not a natural thing. In society, we're not told to talk about what we're good at. We're told to be humble and to be reserved. And absolutely, nobody wants to show off. Nobody wants someone who thinks they're the best, because nobody's the best. There will always be someone better than you at everything. But there'll also in the same breath be someone who's worse. But actually, the ability to have pride in who you are is essential for your own well-being. And with that comes being able to identify those strengths and those positives in who you are. I believe that my autism allows me to be a really, really good friend. I find it hard to make friends, but once I have a friend, I am a really loyal and empathetic and compassionate person. I would do absolutely anything to help that person, to listen to them, to make sure they feel safe and included. And I would always defend them to the ends of the earth. I think that although my autistic brain can be very black and white and it can be very, very overwhelmed and very anxious, with that means that I am aware of the struggles of other people. I can see the struggles and the pain that other people feel, and I'm aware of trying to make those accommodations for others. I think being someone who has struggled, being someone who has been an outsider, as one of those people, we're hyper aware of the others around us. We know what it's like to be unwanted, to be the weirdo, to be the strange person in the room. And with that comes a skill of being able to include others, a skill of being able to see difference as a beauty and not as a deficit. My autism isn't an excuse but an explanation. Discovering that I was autistic allowed me to uncover strengths I never knew I had. Unmasking my autistic traits, when I feel safe to do so, feels like an act of true defiance and rebellion. That I am showing the world who I am. And while some will not like that, many will not like that, actually, people are not going to like me regardless of who I am. Because if it's not my autistic traits that they can find a problem with, it's something else. I saw a quote, being called weird is like being called limited edition, meaning you're something people don't see that often. So remember that. The idea that whatever makes you weird and different is probably your greatest asset. In this world that is constantly trying to make us something else, to be ourselves really is the biggest accomplishment. An autism diagnosis isn't a death sentence. It's not a bad thing. It's a key to the door of understanding who you are, or how you view the world, and the lens that you see our planet through. And yes, there are people who still don't agree. There are people who will believe you're too autistic and too disabled to fit in, that you will never achieve. You will constantly be told you can't, that you won't, and that you shouldn't. And in the same breath, there will be people that tell you that there's nothing wrong with you, that you're just weak and stupid, and that you need to get over yourself, that you look fine, that you can do your makeup and you can talk, so there can't be anything wrong with you. These two scenarios are what many of us face on a regular, daily basis. But in this moment, I'm choosing to ignore. I'm ignoring other people's thoughts and ideas that they put onto me. In this moment, I'm thinking of only my own view and point, because the only person who really knows you is you. The only person who really knows me is me. Many of those people have never walked a day in the shoes of us. And also, they are a small part of our story, and one that is horrible and scary and unbearable, and it can sometimes feel that these people have more power than you will ever have. But that is where our pride must come in. The changing the narrative of being autistic, of what it means, and showing the amazingness that we have. That even with our difficulties and despite the challenges we face, we are just as able to succeed in our own ways. Don't allow other people to put you in a box, and that includes the box of autism. People have an idea of what being autistic looks like. It's another box that we don't need to fit into. I'm an autistic person who speaks. I can communicate verbally as well as written. I'm an autistic person who can make eye contact. I'm an autistic person who wants friends. I'm an autistic person who doesn't like trains and isn't that good at maths, although I did get an A-star at GCSE. I'm an autistic person who has an imagination, who thrives in role play, who likes spontaneity to a certain extent. I'm an autistic person who is loud. I'm an autistic person who is friendly. I'm an autistic person who creates and enjoys being around other people. None of those things make me less autistic. In the same way that I have very severe anxiety. I struggle with food and textures and taste. I have really bad interoception skills and have no idea when I'm hungry or thirsty or need to go to the toilet. I can get so overwhelmed and burnt out that I literally throw myself on the floor screaming. I have full-blown meltdowns as a 23-year-old woman. Some days, all of the clothes touching my body makes me literally want to scream and rip my own skin off. Sometimes my brain feels so busy and bubbling that I literally have to put my own fingers in my ears and start screaming. I don't like really, really loud noises in busy places, but I also like to put my headphones in and my ear defenders on top and put my music up to high volume just to distract myself from the world. All of these things and more are just part of who I am. So this Autistic Pride Day, and for the rest of the year and the years to come, if you are an autistic person, you are valid, you are amazing, and you are you. And whatever anybody else says about that, you know the truth. Let's share our autistic strengths. Let's change the narratives that other people are putting on us. Let's get rid of the box that they are still trying to put us in. And let's fight for a world where difference is not viewed as a deficit, that to ask for help, you have to look a certain way, that actually true inclusion isn't about being the same, but being allowed to be different. My goal is to be so authentically myself that others feel safe to be themselves around me too. If you've enjoyed this episode, if it's given you something to think about, or is a message that you also believe in, please do share the podcast, and let's spread the message of true inclusion and change the narrative that surrounds autism. And remember, even the little things that you do that might seem inconsequential and tiny and not relevant have a way of making other people's lives better and brighter. Thank you to all the amazing, beautiful and special people who embrace me for who I am. The people in my life who believe in me before I could ever believe in myself. I hope that you will all have a lovely week. Take care, do some rest, self-care, and never ever stop being authentically yourself.